Всем добрый день.
Good afternoon.
Рад приветствовать вас здесь сегодня.
Happy to welcome you here.
Да, и прежде чем я начну,
Before I begin,
буквально два слова о себе.
a few words about
Меня
myself.
зовут Алексей Чуриков. Я руководитель
I'm Alexey
департамента
Churikov.
кибербезопасности
I'm
бизнеса в
head
компании
of
InfoSecurity.
cybersecurity at
Мой опыт
InfoSecurity
в
company.
примерно 10 лет.
I have some 10 years of experience
И в
in
обычной жизни
information
сейчас мы
security.
занимаемся консалтингом.
And in ordinary life,
Консалтингом в
we
области
now
IT,
do consulting in
Ну,
IT,
собственно, что
in
такое консалтинг?
InfoSec.
Да, это
What
выстраивание
is consulting?
систем менеджмента,
It is building management systems, it's designing processes, risk assessment, but that's in ordinary life. And in the life beyond ordinary, we try to help our customers help
Вот. И, собственно, с одной из таких проблем к нам и
address any problems that they come across. And it was with one such problem that our customer
Давайте сразу такой небольшой
approached us.
контекст, да, чтобы была
And let me give
такая
you
картинка в голове.
some
То
background.
есть, что за заказчик? Это один из топовых операторов связи.
It was one
Порядка
of
40
the
тысяч человек численность
mobile
персонала
operators with some 40,000
и
people
существенное
working
количество различных бизнес-направлений.
in the company
Представили такой
and a
масштаб,
lot
да,
of
и,
business areas. You can
у
imagine the
заказчика была
scale of the
такая
company.
некая
And
мечта.
the goal
Он хотел
or the dream of the customer was that
распределять
they
расходы
wanted
на
to
информационную безопасность внутри группы компаний.
allocate the costs on InfoSec within the group of company. But there's always a but.
Заказчик не до конца понимал,
The
как, в
customer
принципе,
didn't quite
размечивать подобные
understand
услуги.
how to do cost
С другой
estimates
стороны,
for such services.
бизнес не понимал, а почему он должен за что-то
And
еще платить.
on the other hand, the business was struggling to
Это всё
understand
усугублялось тем, что
why
каких-то
they
значимых
had to
инцидентов,
pay
связанных,
for it, especially
с
as
событиями,
there were
и
no
как таковых
meaningful
не было.
incidents
И с одной стороны, хорошо, что их
that
не было.
resulted in
Но с другой
unacceptable
стороны,
events.
появилась та самая
And it
проблема
was
как раз.
good that
Это,
they didn't have them. But on the other hand, this problem appeared.
потребность в показе, демонстрации некой выгоды от
The need to
информационной
demonstrate
безопасности
the
для бизнеса
value
в
of
условиях, когда,
InfoSec to the
кажется,
business.
что все прекрасно.
When
Итак, собственно,
people
появился у
think
нас
that
такой наш
everything is going well.
который мы назвали таким кодовым названием монетизации инцидентов.
That's how our project came about, which we called by the code word of incident monetization. A few words about the plan that we had. We put together a top of prevented incidents. We calculated the probability of things going wrong, and we then calculated the probability of the events in the chain materializing. And in the end, we got a model that helped us assess the risk of an unacceptable event if a particular incident goes unprevented.
Но есть небольшие вводные. Сразу на берегу такие небольшие вводные, как нам удалось эту модельку запустить быстро.
A little bit more of the context.
Нужно, чтобы в компании
How we were able to launch this model fast. For that, we need to have risk management in the company and a methodology of quantifying risks. That's on the one hand. On the other hand, there should be an incident management mechanism, and there should be a CM that identifies the TTPs that attackers use.
Техники будем использовать как некие такие точки начала моделирования.
We will later use those TTPs as starting points for modeling. I'll talk more about that. And one other thing to start with, let me remind you how a risk assessment scheme looks, the open fair model. So the risk is a probability of damage, but we can also disaggregate risks into more granular parameters to reduce the subjectivity of our assessments and to increase the accuracy. And this helps us transition from a qualitative to quantitative methodology. So that was some context to make sure that we are on the same page. So what was the hypothesis? It was that we have a chain of events that could lead to a catastrophic loss or to an unacceptable event. Yes, but also we have defense measures, including SOC, that to a certain extent neutralize those TTPs, mitigate them, prevent them, or reduce the damage, and prevent this unacceptable event from materializing. So here, when we looked at the incident statistics, what we found is that in 95% of cases, the chain breaks at a particular step.
Ну и тут же встает вопрос,
in those defense measures and processes. So question arises, what happens to the remaining 5%? And that's when the SOC comes in. Whenever something goes wrong, the SOC detects that, and everything is okay again. People live happily because nothing bad happened. But
не будет.
what
Что в
would
этом случае
happen
произойдет?
if there is no SOC? What would happen then?
Гипотезе,
And this brings us to a hypothesis
она по сути разделена на две
that
части.
the
С
chain
одной стороны, левая часть
is separated into two parts.
вероятность того, что что-то
On the
пойдет не
left,
так,
probability
что наши
number
средства
one
защиты
is
штатные
the
не
probability of
отработают.
things going wrong, that the response tools would not work as they should. And the second part is the probability
риск недопустим, то есть недопустимое событие будет реализовано, и ну, с учетом
the
определенных там характеристик
unacceptable
агентов
risk
угроз, силы контроля. и
materializing.
Вот. Но, опять же, то самое «но». Мы не знаем, куда именно
But
пойдет злоумышленник.
we
Мы не знаем,
don't
как именно
know
он будет атаковать. Потому что у
where
нас
or what
в
the
матрице
attacker
Майнтри довольно-таки много
would
понятных там
target.
техник, тактик.
My
И
tree
если
has
пытаться
a lot of
построить все возможные
TTPs.
комбинации,
And
мы
if we
просто
tried
там
to
умрем, и на этом все у нас заглохнет. Поэтому
protect
для
against all
упрощения модели мы
combinations,
достигли такого некого консенсуса внутри, то есть мы
it would
строим
hardly be
примерно там
possible.
2-3-4
So we reached a
релевантных
consensus
цепочки
that
для
will
каждого
build
типа
2 to 4
инцидентов.
relevant
И,
chains for every
на самом
type of
деле,
incidents.
что такое релевантные, да, и причем
And
тут тепловые
by
карты. Я сейчас
relevance,
всё
I
после
mean,
этого,
and by the
чуть
way,
подробнее поговорим.
what heat maps have to do with that.
Хорошо,
I'll talk
построили
about that a little bit
цепочки.
later. Okay, so we've built the chains,
И вот тут сразу такой небольшой пример, чтобы не
and
запутаться.
here's
То
an
есть, например,
example
мы рассматриваем события типа
for you not
phishing.
to get confused.
Этих событий
Say
у нас
we
примерно
look at
2650
events of the phishing
штук в
type,
год.
and we have some
Но при этом
2,650
всего
events of those,
193.
but the incidents are 193. So in 193 cases,
штатные средства защиты не отработали.
our
Ну, не знаю,
protection
антиспам
tools
взял, антиспам пропустил,
failed
193 письма у нас
to
дошло до пользователей. Вот.
respond.
И как рассчитать вероятность?
How do we calculate the probability? Number one, we divide one by the other and get 7% as the probability of the incident materializing.
На основе тех
Then
самых
we
тепловых карт, про которые сейчас буду говорить. И
build the chain based on the heat maps that I'll talk about, and based on the threats, based on the power of control under the open fair methodology, we get 8.1%. So that was our hypothesis that transformed the risk assessment algorithm
как она
provided by
модифицировала.
open
То есть у нас
fair.
вероятность как
And
раз разбилась на
what
те самые
the modification was
вероятность возникновения инцидента
is that
вероятность реализации
the
цепочки
probability split into two, the probability of the incident materializing
в случае, если этот
and the
инцидент не будет предотвращен.
probability of the unacceptable event materializing if the incident is not prevented. Okay, so that was the theoretical background. What about practice? We took the statistics of
Тот самый топ инцидентов.
the SOC
Опять же, для
and we put together top 10 incidents.
Техники здесь выписаны на экране.
The TTPs you can see here
Вполне знакомы.
in the screen,
Хорошо. Что мы дальше с
they
ними делаем?
have quite well-known names.
Цепочки.
What do we do next? Remember, we have two parts of the chain. Let's look at the left part first.
Вероятность
Let's calculate
возникновения, в принципе,
the
подобного инцидента.
probability of such an incident
Есть по
materializing.
каждому типу этих инцидентов статистика по
So
количеству
for
событий.
every type of incidents, there's statistics on the number of events and the number of incidents. And as an output, dividing one by another, we get the probability.
Все быстро происходило, рассчитывалось.
Well,
Дальше нам нужно
this was
вторую
very
часть.
quick to
Вот
do,
вторая
and then
часть,
we've
она,
got to calculate the second
как
part.
раз, и в этом была суть проекта,
And
построить
that
вот эту
was
самую
the
вторую часть.
point of the project, to develop the second part.
То есть у нас есть
Here's what we do here.
понимание,
We have
что на том
an understanding that at some point
цепочка оборвалась. Есть те
the
самые
chain breaks.
техники, которые зарегистрированы в CM.
There are the TTPs that we have in our CM by our CM engineers, and for us that would be the starting point of the modeling.
Куда и как именно пойдет злоумышленник? И что у нас есть?
That's our hypothesis of where the attacker would potentially
Категории этих самых агентов угроз.
go to. We have categories of threat agents, so we have agreed from the start that we don't consider everyone. We consider only those who seem to be the most relevant. In particular, those insiders, such as our own employees with various privileges, whether past or present, and APT groups. And we also understand the industry in which the customer operates and what services they provide. And so by leveraging many smart books and articles and papers published by respected professionals, we started building a heat map. And here's how a heat map on insiders looks like. The screen shows the most frequent TTPs that insiders use. Or, for example, here's a heat map of APT groups. We have analyzed the most relevant APT groups for this particular industry. We have looked through quite a lot of books and papers, and we've come up with this colored chart. And what it says is that if we think of the matrix that has quite a lot of various TTPs, but because there's a heat map, we have narrowed down the potential TTPs to some 30% of the overall amount. And when we structure chains, we don't develop them in a vacuum, but we build them deliberately with purpose, based on the business context, on the context of that particular business. Okay, so we've put together our heat maps. What did we do next? We took every incident topic and we developed kill chains.
Ну вот опять же, как я про фишинг говорил, да, вот сейчас опять же цепочка фишинга на экране.
I spoke about phishing as an example. So here, again, we have the kill chain of phishing. Quite a straightforward chain, well known. You get an email, you open it, and malware is launched, etc. Then exfiltration and disk wipe.
Подробно останавливаться не буду. Окей. Если левую часть цепочки мы рассчитывали по статистике.
Okay, if the left part of the chain was calculated based on statistics, on the right one we don't have statistics because the company didn't have such incidents.
Пользуемся той самой методологией, мы
Then
спускаемся на
we
уровень ниже.
use the methodology. We go one step lower and we assess the
Да, по сути,
lower
оцениваем
level
каждый параметр в
parameters.
отдельности.
We look at each parameter
В
individually.
частности, например, вот частота контакта, вероятность действия.
Say frequency of contact, the probability of action, the threat potential.
Агента угроз.
All of this characterizes the threat agent. And here's an example. There's a model that does distribution,
Вот если мы,
etc.
если мы, например, рассматриваем какой-то риск, опять же, так в вакууме, пытаемся
Well,
спрогнозировать
if we think of a risk in a vacuum and try to predict some future scenario,
то, конечно,
starting from the beginning of the chain to the very end, then we would look at the history of violations, we'd look at the attractiveness of an asset for the threat actor, the cost of an attack, etc.
Когда мы пытаемся достроить killchain, то есть
When we try to
злоумышленник внутри, мы знаем, что
continue with the kill chain, we know that the attacker is already
такой
in our perimeter, and when we try to predict the most catastrophic scenario, the most unacceptable event, then these parameters, the frequency of contact and the probability of action,
это то, что касалось
are
агента угрозы. Если сказать, если
recalculated.
контроли, тут тоже
As for the power of controls, also quite an interesting outcome. We have a chain
техник.
that consists of TTPs.
Большинство техник
And most of the TTPs
из CIS controls.
in my tree are mapped to CIS controls.
Погружаемся
What this gives
в
us
среду и Т, и Б в контроле, которые
is that we looked at the controls that the company has in IT and InfoSec
там какие-то оценочки.
and
Шкала, там
see
оценка,
how they are implemented at the moment, and we give them some ranking.
Дальше, по сути, мы по
The
каждой
ranking scale is not important.
текущую силу
Then for every TTP we calculate the current power of controls.
И дальше высчитываем силу контроля для всей цепочки.
And then we calculate the power of controls for the whole chain using some
контроля по каждой технике.
unsophisticated math,
На выходе какое-то значение.
arriving at some final outcome, in this case 0.23.
Если там мапить на CIS controls,
So if we map it to CIS controls,
внедренных требований.
then it means that we have 83% of requirements implemented.
Параметры нижнего уровня. Переходим.
Okay, we are done with the lower level parameters. Let's upscale. So we don't want to kind of kill the customer with our details, so we use some simplistic models, so we see the probability of about 8%. So this is probability of the unacceptable event if the SOC doesn't work and if we don't prevent this incident. Okay, we have the left one, the right one, some straightforward mathematics. We look at the total probability.
Как это читать? То есть вероятность реализации.
Okay, the probability of an unexpected event, because the incident like phishing is not prevented, it's 0.59%.
Это все было там про математику.
Well, that's about mathematics and probabilities.
Другую математику.
Now let's look at some other mathematics. Let's talk about the damage.
Здесь, опять же, проводится довольно-таки такая большая работа.
Here we do a lot, and this is not about InfoSec. We are talking with the business guys, marketing guys, and financial guys. And we look at some parameters.
Про какой ущерб мы говорим?
Okay, what kind of damage are we talking about here? So some regulatory fines.
Какие-то, может быть, административные
Some administrative
санкции юрисдикции.
and other issues.
Это там довольно-таки просто гуглится, находится.
You can easily Google this and find this. That's quite straightforward. Then some litigation,
и так далее. Опять же, на основе практики.
compensations, and so on and so forth. So you can find this. It's not difficult. But the most problematic thing starts when we go inside the business, when we look at the business metrics. So, like, we see fewer new clients, we are losing clients, we underperform in terms of profit, and all of that totals to some kind of damage caused by this unacceptable event. Okay, so we have the parameters, we have the probability and the damage. Now we can calculate the risks. Okay, we have a phishing incident. If it is not prevented, then the potential damage is 1 billion. Probability is 0.59%, so the risk is about 6.5 million. So we have kind of built this model to an extent. So we have some kind of understanding how much we are saving for the business, the types of risks we prevent in rubles when we prevent incidents. Okay, what can we do with this model? We have several cases.
Строить всякие автоматические отчеты.
You can have some automated reports and dashboards on your SOC's performance.
Инцидентов, сколько
How many incidents, how many were prevented, what's the total risk, and so on.
Немножко по-другому
So you might interpret the return on capital employed in a different way. So you kind of justify and the current investment. And this model can be also used to prioritize some events or measures or activities to further develop your information security. You can give preferences to the things which cause the highest risks today, and this way you'll be able to reduce the critical factors. Okay, we have an example of this dashboard, the summary level of risk for not prevented incidents for every type of incident. So we talk about the control, power of control, and the number of incidents, and show how many risks have been prevented. And we can also go back to the ROSI model. Okay, the ROSI model is there to justify the investment in information security. And when we have almost everything, we need to highlight this benefit. So we turn it upside down. We take 4 parameters: the average number of events, the average probability, the average damage, and then we have some kind of coefficient, 6.6. What does it mean? It means that every ruble invested into information security prevents 6.6 rubles of damage.
Да, но если так немножко подытожить.
Okay, summing up.
У нас есть некий, вот там
We have
представлен, да,
an
у
algorithm.
нас есть некий инцидент.
We have an incident, we prevented it, and we want to calculate what could have happened if we had not prevented this.
Технику, которая была
Then we
зарегистрирована
look
в CM-ке
at
как
the
некую точку моделирования.
CM technique as a modeling
Рассчитываем вероятности вместе с
basis, then we build the kill chain probabilities, determine the potential loss with the business, and then we have the risk, the risks we mentioned. Okay, here in gray, we show the automated things, like for the first time. We did it kind of manually. We had some Excel spreadsheets for this, but everything we could connect with some formulas, so it was connected like that. And if you further develop your model, automation becomes a must. And some security vision and our vision models, they can play pretty well here, and you can introduce this logic so that you calculate all of this. 99% of human actions might be automated here. But again, there is a but everywhere, so it doesn't always work. If we talk about DDoS or DLP or end-user-like incidents, this is not going to work because you cannot kind of proceed down the kill chain. You need some other flexible approaches and other business metrics. We can discuss it further. Okay, we have another assumption here, which is also a limitation.
Мы когда на другом мероприятии выступали,
we spoke at a different event showing this presentation, and we had a question from our colleagues, like, okay, we start with a technique which is registered in the SAM, and how do you validate
техника правильно была.
that it was properly registered?
Здесь как раз мы тоже долго думали, и по сути, если
we spent some time thinking about it, and if we don't talk about the SAM engineer work, we can say that we develop them, and we trust them, and we trust the techniques there. Okay, when we're simulated the kill chains, to simulate this, we go from the left to the right. We don't run in circles, and so on. This could be done easily, but in this specific case, we are kind of move stepwise from the left to the right. Another important thing, we don't consider the kind of importance of the incident. Did it happen in winter or in summer, first day of the quarter, last day of the quarter? This is not important for us in this model. And some conclusions in terms of the next steps, how to develop the model. Number one,
это детализация ущерба на конкретные
we should detail
мы считали, мы по сути брали допустимые события там в среднем по больничке для всей группы.
In our case, we looked at this considering averages and so on, but now we want to be more precise, and we want the business metrics and some specific things to be calculated or estimated for a given business unit. We cannot move ahead without automation here. So we should automate whatever we can. If we have the ERP system running on SDLC, SDRC, you can do it there. You can add some fields, and you have the dashboards and reports what the SOC and the business guys want to see, because it's all shown in rubles. Okay, this is it from me. Should you have any questions or you want some details on something, please mention. I can see someone. Thank you very much. It's a really interesting method, an interesting way you put it, a lot of practical information. I have a question. You talked about the consequences and talked about estimating the damage in rubles. Okay, there are several questions here. Number one, when you talk about fines, do you mean, well, what kind of fines do you mean? Do you mean that a regulator will see it, or do you mean that this will be like a fine related to a personal data leakage for an individual client? The question is, how do you clean out your data? Because you have natural attrition and many other things might cause customer attrition. And so how can you make this pure numbers? So you should have a look at the current attrition, but it can differ based on the time frame, 1 month, 3 months, 6 months. So if you really want to understand how many clients left because of the incident or some consequences thereof, if we run this marketing research, then it will give us some pure numbers we could calculate. But the way you did it, I understand you use some averages, and I think that we need some more detail on this. Thank you. Thank you very much for the question. I'll start with business metrics. So how do you calculate the attrition and the reduction of inflow of new clients? Okay, we don't have some details saying that these people left because of the incident and so on and so forth. This is quite difficult to kind of find it. But still, we have a hypothesis. We have some statistics for several years, and we'll find this natural numbers, natural attrition, natural growth, and we have some kind of reference points or benchmarks. And then with the business and marketing guys, and if we have we have some international articles and publications on this, and we use all that to forecast what will happen if you have leakages or unacceptable events like that, and if our business is disrupted, the infrastructure is destroyed, and so on. Well, this level, we try to understand the level of negative consequences for our customers and the clients of our customers to build this hypothesis. So if the natural attrition, say, is 5%, and if our infrastructure is destroyed, and if we cannot provide services for a week, then it will be a few points higher. So we use these models, hypotheses, and brainstorming sessions. Indeed, we cannot be detailed and precise to say that we have 130 clients leaving us. So no, this is not possible. This is all model level.
Если говорить про второе, про штрафы,
talking about fines.
Рассматриваем на самом деле в совокупности. То есть, опять же, когда мы говорим про какой-то именно недопустимый,
when we talk about some unacceptable event, we talk about the most catastrophic case. So we don't say that there are 2 people filing a complaint about it. So this would be a mass complaint. And again, I'm talking about some PDNs. So we have massive complaints. We say that regulators come to us and they want us to pay fines. But we are not only considering Roskomnadzor, the Russian communication watchdog, and others. We have the tax service and so on. They can fine us for failing to provide some kind of reports and so on and so forth. So we try to have a holistic view of all of that. Say, we have 1 records left. It doesn't mean that 1 million people will file a complaint about us. So we look at some court rulings. So we say that on average 10% of people file complaints. Okay, we take this 10% from our total number of customers. We multiply this by the average compensation the operator will have to pay, and hence we have some kind of damage amount for this or that case. Thank you.
Можете поделиться, сколько у вас времени занял этот проект? От
How
момента,
long
как вам
did
пришел
it take
заказчик, и когда вы предоставили ему расчет?
Да, вопрос интересный.
That's a good question.
Скажем, есть несколько подводных камней. То есть,
Well, there are several kind of
в компании должен быть внедрен риск
underwater stones hidden here. So the company should have risk management. And we had introduced risk management, this methodology for quantitative risk assessment. At that time, we had some kind of top-level information about the InfoSec kind of environment. So we saved a lot this way. Talking about the time frame, considering all the hypotheses and discussions and so on, this took about 4 months. But since this hypothesis did take off, it helped the customer, and we used it in some other places. So now we can say that it is kind of more streamlined. Well, the first time it's always difficult, but now it takes a month to say 45 days.